Hello and welcome to Politalks on RPTV. I'm your host for today, Trayvon, and we're here with special guest Murphy Browne, who is a school trustee candidate for Toronto Centre, Rosedale. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Murphy, tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you want to become a school trustee candidate.
I decided to become a candidate because I've always been passionate about education, about the education system. I have been an advocate for students, for parents in the education system, not only in Toronto, but in other areas. I've gone to schools with parents and with students who needed help to navigate the system in other places in Ontario.
What ward are you running for?
I am running in Ward 14, and that covers two city wards, Wards 27 and 28, and that runs from Avenue Road to the Don Valley Parkway, that's east to west, and from north to south, just north of Rosedale and all the way down south to the Toronto Islands.
How long have you been campaigning in Regent Park in preparation for this election?
I've been campaigning for about 2 weeks now. And even before I started campaigning, I have spoken to people who live in Regent Park, in St. Jamestown, in other parts of Ward 14, which, as I said before, covers the city wards 27 and 28, about the education system. I've spoken to students, I've spoken to parents over the years, over the months, and a lot of people encouraged me to become a candidate because of the work that I've done.
So being a candidate, what are some of the responsibilities that you have to take on?
Well, some of the responsibilities that trustees have include establishing policies, setting budgets and allocating resources, formulating plans for the board and setting priorities that reflect the community and the values and goals of the community. And it's such a wide range of people who live in the community, because there are people who live, for instance, in Ontario housing and are struggling with poverty, with being sure that they have money to pay their rent and that their children are not going to school hungry and that there is time for homework, and parents whose first languages are not English sometimes are looking for places where they can take their children, where their children can get help with homework. And then you have the higher income brackets, some areas in Cabbagetown and in Rosedale where people do not struggle with this, and they have a better grasp of how to navigate through the education system.
So could you explain the election process for school trustees?
The election process is that every 4 years during the municipal election, and the last time was, of course, in 2010, there are 22 trustees to be elected, whereas there are 44 councillors. Since the amalgamation of the City of Toronto, where it's no longer the Toronto Board of Education, but the Toronto District School Board, which encompasses the former Scarborough, North York, and so on. There are 22 trustees who cover 2 city wards, and all the schools, all the public schools in those wards, elementary schools and secondary schools, are the responsibility of the trustee to ensure that there is a quality education, and affordable, of course, because there is a budget to consider.
So in total, how many wards are there in total?
There are 22 trustee wards,
okay.
but 44 city wards.
Okay.
So each trustee covers 2 city wards.
Does the role of a school trustee extend beyond the boundaries of a district school board?
The trustee responsibility does extend beyond their particular ward because they have to work with other trustees. And whatever concerns you have in your ward, you have to bring it to the board to discuss with the other trustees. And of course, you have to be able to negotiate because, as I said, there is the budget to consider, and there sometimes people have to think about what another ward is going through.
So are there any changes you hope to see on the board this year?
I hope to see a more inclusive curriculum, for one thing. And by an inclusive curriculum, I mean more of, for instance, the First Nations history included, African Canadian history, the history of Asian people in Canada, things like the Chinese head tax. I think that students need to know what has gone into making up this country. They need to know all that history. They need to be aware of the contributions of everybody, for instance.
Do you think our Toronto School Board's budget is being spent wisely?
Over the past few weeks, months, there have been some troubling information coming out of the Toronto District School Board about careless spending. There have been reports in the newspapers about trustees who have been very nonchalant about spending taxpayers' money, and I think that that needs to be changed.
How do you think it can be spent
I
wisely?
think that the trustees need to be accountable, and trustees cannot just spend money willy-nilly without being accountable for this money, because the money is the money that comes from taxpayers, hard-working people. Many people make less than minimum wage and are really struggling to make ends meet. So when a trustee can carelessly say, oh, it's just $20, what's the big deal? I think that's unacceptable. And there has to be accountability for how taxpayers' money is spent.
How are the parents involved in school board?
Parents are involved in various organizations. There are organizations that are board organizations, but parents can be involved at the school council level. They can start from there because many parents really don't have the time to attend every meeting. But school council meetings are very important. They can be involved at the school level. They can volunteer in their child's class. They can become involved at ward level. When my children were in school, I was involved at school council level, at ward level, chairing the ward council. And I was also co-chair of the Organization of Parents of Black Children. I was co-chair of the Parent Community Network and campaigned for public education. And in those roles, I made deputations to the board and was instrumental in my role as co-chair of these organizations in bringing attention to policies that needed to be changed.
What sort of policies are put under review on the school board system?
I remember that one policy that caused concern was closing of schools. Parents, if your child is going to a particular school and it's convenient and you consider it the hub of the community, you do not want to see that school closed. And there is not a whole lot of consideration of parents when there is a decision at the board to close schools. And there have been so many occasions where parents fought to keep schools open, sometimes not successfully, and staff that were in place to support parents, especially parents who are new to the system, whose first language is not English. Many of those positions were cut, and I think that those are policies that need to be revisited.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thanks once again for joining our show, Murphy.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and the election is on October 27th, and I am asking people to support me when you go to the ballots on October 27th, and it's very important we live in this democracy that we go out and exercise our right to vote. And my name is Murphy Browne. When you see Murphy Browne, just put a little tick in that box. Thank you.